Welcome back once again to another episode of Research Fantasy presents NBA Fantasy Ballers DFS edition. It's the 24th of February. It's a Friday. We're one day removed from the NBA returning from the All-Star break, and we have our favorite plays for you today. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you my three favorite core plays, and I'm going to build many of my lineups around tonight. And I'm going to give you three value plays exclusive to our YouTube audience that could really help you stack your lineup and make your money go a long way. Last night, if you got our email through our subscriber list, you'll see that our projections actually worked out pretty well with the exception of Drew Holiday, who just didn't look like he belonged on the court. He made some of the stupidest decisions I think I've ever seen a basketball player make in my life, and he really kept some really strong lineups from possibly even winning tournaments. So if you haven't already, check them out. Go over to researchfantasy.com. Check out our projections in our research platform for the NBA. Today we're going to start off just like we did yesterday with a point guard being our top overall play, and that's Russell Westbrook. There's obviously a little bit of a concern here that Westbrook might not see a ton of minutes because this could turn into a blowout. And I understand that, but I think with the changes that Oklahoma City is going to be going through, with Taj Gibson coming on board, even if they don't play, I think it's just they're sending some guys out. It takes a while for the rotations, I think, to really work themselves back into play. He's expensive. I mean, 23.3 on Fantasy Draft, 12.7 on FanDuel, 13,000 on DraftKings. He's going to need 68 to 70 fantasy points to do it, but this is a perfect matchup. This is a triple-double all day for Russell Westbrook, and on sites like Fantasy Draft and DraftKings where you're getting those extra points for it, I don't understand what the value that I think exists out there today. I just don't understand why you don't just throw Westbrook in as your starting point. If you don't want to go that route, let's move on to Jimmy Butler of the Chicago Bulls. Jimmy Butler is 17.3 on Fantasy Draft, 93 on FanDuel, 94 on DraftKings. A little bit high, but I can see him coming out strong from the All-Star break. He's one of the few guys on the slate that I think could come close to Russell Westbrook type numbers. I mean, we've seen Jimmy put together a couple of 60-point performances this year. I really like the high-tempo matchup with a defensively inefficient Suns team that he should be able to take advantage of. Their best defender, arguably, and P.J. Tucker, is now a member of the Toronto Raptors. I do think with Taj Gibson and Doug McDermott being shipped to Oklahoma City that Chicago is not going to be as tight as we want them to be, and I think the Suns are going to be able to hang in this one. I can see a 50-point performance coming from Butler today, and that's exactly what we'll need for him to really hit value. Maybe my favorite play at the dollar price is DeMar DeRozan of the Toronto Raptors at 14.3 on Fantasy Draft, 8.1 on FanDuel, 78 on DraftKings, and I really, really like that price on DraftKings. I'm not really that concerned in terms of Serge Ibaka coming over and stealing looks away. Honestly, I think Toronto's a team that kind of lives and dies through their guard position. They're taking on a Celtics team that has just been one of the best teams to for fantasy production, especially at the guard spots. Avery Bradley has been injured for what feels like the entire season. Jay Crowder has not been very good defensively, and Isaiah Thomas is not on the court to be a defensive presence. So I can see DeRozan possibly heading towards the 50-point mark tonight, and I wouldn't discount Kyle Lowry either. I think actually it's a great tournament strategy to throw both of those guys in there right around the $8,000 mark on FanDuel and DraftKings, and I believe the $14,000 to $15,000 mark on Fantasy Draft. All right, now for our breadwinners, and if you listened yesterday, whether it be to our YouTube video or to our podcast, Tim Frazier didn't come through, but Jusuf Nurkic came through with an almost 50-point outing, depending on what site you play. Willie Cauley-Stein had the biggest game of his career, and Mo Harkless actually put up a really good number 2. Terrence Ross, I can't remember if I mentioned him or not, but he put up a really nice spot. So let's try to keep the trend going today. I think the most popular play of the night, value-wise, is probably going to be Bobby Portis of the Chicago Bulls, and here's why. Taj Gibson shipped out of town. Doug McDermott shipped out too. Paul Zipser's hurt. This team, even though it does have Anthony Morrow coming in, I don't think we're going to see these Oklahoma City players in the lineup for Chicago tonight. And what that ultimately means is that they're shorthanded at a couple of different positions. I could see Nikola Mirotic finally getting off the bench and moving and doing a lot more at the small forward position, leaving Bobby Portis, who is at 9,800 on Fantasy Draft, 4,200 on FanDuel, and 5,000 on DraftKings, having just a ton of time to play at that power forward position. I think this up-tempo matchup really suits his style of play, and for a guy who needs, depending on the site, 21 to about 30 points to hit value, I can see it happening. I mean, I didn't see Willie Cauley-Stein having a big game, but I did, relative to his price, think he'd be able to come through with 24 to 26 points. I think that Portis should be able to come through, having gotten a little more opportunity in Chicago than Cauley-Stein has in Sacramento. I could see Portis having anywhere from that 25 to 35 point mark. I would be very cautious about using him in your cash games, because it seems like every time that he's set up to do something well, he's dropped the ball. So just be cautious. Moving on from there, I like Chris Middleton. 8,700 on Fantasy Draft, 4,600 on FanDuel, 4,400 on DraftKings. He's coming off of his biggest game of the season against Brooklyn, which was also the most minutes of the season. I'm hoping he doesn't move back into the starting lineup tonight. Kind of feeling like he's not going to, but I do think we'll see his minutes float in that 24 to 26 minute range. I think he's capable of a point a minute, even against a stingy Utah team. This is a high-quality player who was turning out 30 to 40 performances all day last year, so there's no reason why he couldn't come through at 24 and 26 here. My thing is, I think that a lot of people are going to look past him because he's not getting the minutes, he's not stable, and he's playing Utah, making him that perfect kind of pivot play in tournaments if you want to save some cash and hope for the best. Finally, for Fantasy Draft and DraftKings exclusively, I'm going to point out Pau Gasol. It looks like Gasol is going to be coming back from his thumb injury. This isn't an injury that you would necessarily think would lead him to getting less minutes. DeAndre Jordan has really struggled guarding lately. He doesn't have the same flow without Chris Paul on the floor defensively, it seems. So I think Pau Gasol, 9,700 on Fantasy Draft, 4,900 on DraftKings, just a little too expensive at 6,200 on FanDuel for me to want to buy into him there. But I think he's got 25 to 30 point upside tonight, with the 30 point being the high end of the upside, which is why I don't really want to go in too hard with him on FanDuel. Hope you enjoyed what you heard. Don't forget, visit us on researchfantasy.com. Sign up for our email mailing list. You'll get all of our picks, all of our news, everything that's happening. And believe me, a lot is going to be happening within the next couple of months. Go visit us at Facebook, Research Fantasy. Find us online at Twitter at Research and Win, and we'll see you next time.